if you were a bread company, it doesn't matter how expensive your kitchen is. If they're good ingredients, you love baking, they don't care about your kitchen. They care about your bread. That first encounter at the front desk. Hey, how are you? Do you get the snobby coffee shop vibe from someone that's behind the front desk? Or is it someone that smiles at you and waves back because they're also happy to be in that space? We had one of our training walls got blown out by an old Soviet mortar round that came over and it blew the entire tent to pieces. And that might be one of the only climbing wall casualties of war.
Welcome to the Climbing Gym Growth Podcast, where we share stories and strategies from climbing gym owners and operators to help you grow your community and business. Today, I'm joined by Aaron Parlier from Center 45 in Boone, North Carolina. Thanks for joining, Aaron.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm psyched to have you on. So, you've been in the industry for a while, and I think a lot of listeners have a lot to learn. So let's get into it. So let's start with your personal backstory with climbing and the climbing industry.
Quick note about this episode. We had some connectivity issues due to a windstorm, so my apologies if this feels like we skip around a little bit. So, okay, back to it.
There's a ridge line near where I grew up called Big Walker. It's just this really long ridge that runs. You can take it all the way to close to Kentucky, or you can go, a couple counties north and you're in West Virginia. And all along the top of that, there's sandstone boulders. And once I got my license, I could just drive up there. And it's funny. Like I had no idea there was such a thing as bouldering. But the inception of bouldering historically, is people in Font practicing climbing for big cliffs on boulders. And that's exactly how I treated it. I would go up there. I didn't know what bouldering was, but I was like, this is something that I can do on my own and I can practice climbing. And it turned out that's, literally what it's been for years and years and years. So those are really cool boulders. I didn't know anyone else was doing that, but there was people doing that all over the world. And it wasn't until I joined the Army that I went into my first climbing gym, and it was down in Fayetteville, North Carolina, down at Fort Bragg. It's one of the oldest indoor climbing gyms on the East Coast, called the Climbing Place. And my buddy that I'd met, he was from Colorado, and he was like, "Aaron, you like climbing?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally." He's like, "Come to this gym with me." And I was like, "For what?" Not knowing that it was like a climbing gym. He was like, "Oh, we can practice climbing." And I thought it was going to be some weird workout equipment. But when I met him there, I realized, oh, this is an indoor climbing gym. And it was like a light switch turned on, where I saw people bouldering. I saw people route climbing indoors. I saw people who were doing things that I was like, this is literally impossible for a human being to do. And it was immediate for me. Every single day that I would, get off work at the Army after doing a lot of physical activity all day, I would go there and spend hours. And from like my very first day climbing there, I remember I drove a Dodge Dakota pickup truck, and I went to open up the door to my truck, and I had to use both hands. It was like, you lift up on the handle. I couldn't do it with one hand. I had to use two hands. I was so pumped out of my mind. And so that was every day. And I got into it from that point forward. Long story short, I spent about 15 months deployed in Afghanistan, and even built some training walls and had climbing holds helicoptered in, and we built some really cool training walls and some busted old mechanics tents. We had one of our training walls got blown out by an old Soviet mortar round that came over, and it blew the entire tent to pieces. And that might be one of the only climbing wall casualties of war that I can think of. But we even have a couple of those holds still that I brought back on our spray wall here in Center 45. But came back and just fast forward, climbed a bunch all throughout Southwest Virginia, North Carolina, deeper into that. Still that's a huge part of my climbing today. Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3,000 first ascents kind of in the central Appalachia area.
Well, that's an incredible story. I have so many questions that I want to just dive into, from Afghanistan to developing over 3,000 boulders. I mean, that's an incredible resume. Um, but for the sake of time, we will sort of move forward. You've been open for 10 plus years now. So I have a lot of listeners that are gym owners kind of starting out, and they're sort of interested in learning more about when other gym owners are feeling like they're in a sustainable place financially. So for yourself, do you feel like you're at that place, and kind of when did you get there? And maybe a little bit of like how you got there.
Over the years, it has grown, and it's grown slowly, to me at a snail's pace. But I'm occasionally reminded whenever folks that um, were in school at Boone, left school, and then turned around and came back to Boone and visit the gym again. They're like, oh, wow, y'all have done so much. To me, it's the tiniest little iterations, but they're steady. And that's when I'm like, oh, yeah, actually, this place, we have gotten brand new flooring in the gym and
Mhm.
all of these things and switched them up. So they, those, the slow and steady growth, I think is really important to keep in mind. And those are my measures of success, which would probably be different than if you were starting a huge commercial gym and we're just, you know, banking on birthday parties and the occasional reset and looking at all of the different staffing scenarios that have to go on and all of these, added things that I don't necessarily have to, worry about as much with a smaller scale facility. That's just probably a different take on success and growth.
So it's you're saying sort of the how behind how you got to that place is sort of slow, iterative process of kind of improving year over year. Do you have any specifics as to some of those things that you have focused on over the years that have kind of led you to be, yeah, a little bit more profitable, I guess?
I worked pretty much nonstop for like a year or two, and was able to be dead in the middle of kind of everything, like every aspect of the gym, from hold washing, taking those things down to you know on the ground setting every single week, building the setting team, um, working opening shifts, working closing shifts, and pulling those and building the staff out very small,
Mhm.
all while weighing against that what we were actually able to pay in payroll, and making decisions kind of based off of each of those. Like once we got to a certain point where we felt really good about this, um, we could focus on another area, and each one of those were incremental. I think we I think we did like crowdfunding for our first big hold order.
Okay.
So even the amount of holds that we had to start with was calculated by what
Mm.
by our crowdfunding campaign. So I think a lot of our decisions were made within constraints to begin with. Like, what can we do within this budget that we have? Um, and I think whenever we made it a year and we were able to look and see, like, oh, actually, we are getting members. We can afford to do X, Y, and Z. We can afford to bring on a couple more people to help with these things. So a lot of those decisions were already, in a way, made for us by what budget we had. But in terms of growth, I guess that was the question: is how do we know when we were able to do another thing? And we have a small membership base compared to Sport Rock, So as our membership base has grown and we brought more in, we've been able to do more. We've been able to have more people on staff. We've been able to grow our setting team, pay our setters better, and all of those metrics kind of follow along exactly with our membership growth chart.
So, with the expansion, what was sort of the impetus to add on that extra section? What were you finding that you were having sort of capacity issues, or what was going on there?
We definitely had capacity issues.
Mhm.
In general, it's all based off of weather. But whenever we get into our winter months and or rainy months, if it is a cold, icy, snowy couple of weeks, we are at capacity all the time. And, a few years prior to this year, it got to the point where at a drop of a dime, it can be beautiful weather. There's no one here. And the very next day, you're shoulder to shoulder with folks. So we slowly had the idea, once the current tenants and the section of the warehouse that we've sublet out for the past couple of years, we're like, all right, well, once, whenever they get to the point that they want to move on, no rush on our end, but whenever they want to move on, we just won't seek someone else out to fill that space, and we're going to make the move. And we decided that was going to be what would help us in terms of people being able to spread out. So we added a back awning, improved the space, kind of outdoor space behind our gyms, so that in the warmer months, we can open up all these bay doors. There's a big patio awning out the back side of our warehouse. People can be outside. Even if it's raining a little bit, you can still be out there. And then also we would have the studio wall, and it's like the sectioned off portion we got some old like French doors, so that you can open them up whenever things open to the public, just most of the time, or you can shut these French doors. So we can now do like birthday parties in the morning, and it doesn't interfere with the membership base.
Oh, cool.
We can have all of our competition team. Of course, our whole gym is open for our competition practices, but we can run drills, kind of the more impactful drills that where most of the members are like, oh man, like all these little comp mutants are flashing my project. So like we can
doing 4x4s in my project. Yeah, exactly.
we can close it, and also with the adjustable wall, it works really perfectly because so much of the competitions these days it's movement based, it's balance and coordination climbs. So we can kick that wall back to competition slab in varying degrees of that, and do these, footwalk drills and all of those things. And then we can kick it over to 40 degrees overhung if we want to, and totally change the dynamic of practice that way, all while being open regular hours for a membership base. So that works really well. And then when it's really busy, just having bay door open, studio wall space open, and people have the ability to spread out more. And it works really well for those periods of time where the gym does feel a little congested, even though it is a tiny community in a small space, it will still feel that way.
Yeah. So being in a college town, I assume you have a lot of people that are kind of coming to the gym and they're new to the sport. Is that a fair assumption?
I feel like we do get folks that are new to the sport. However, the university has a university climbing wall. So as long as I've been in Boone, and then even longer than that, that has been a big part of the community, is the Appalachian State Rec Center climbing wall, and it's an entreprise fake rock. It actually does have a lead wall that goes up to about 45 or 50 feet or something, and then it's decent. And then it has that modular fake rock bouldering wall section that you can't put a hold on it that's bigger than your face, otherwise it's going to be hanging off of some rock feature. But it's really cool to have that. And when we were opening, I even talked to the fellow that ran that rec center wall. I came and I talked to him as we were planning, and he was like, you all have to open. He was like, you have to open. This wall has never been used for its intended purposes. It's always been crazy. And I personally would wait upwards of 2 hours to get access to that wall. I would do my homework at the rec center while my name was on the waiting list so I could train there. So he was so stoked and supportive. And he was like, yeah, like this wall is meant to be used for students that are interested in getting into the sport, and to be used for our rec program to learn how to belay and things like that. So he was like, I would love it to make this the stepping stone. If folks want to get into it, it's a low barrier of entry. Their tuition pays for it. If they want to get more into it, we will have a sign that says go to Center 45.
Wow, that's incredible. Like you have a little feeder program going on there, and it's cool to hear that like you guys are supporting each other in that way. I feel like sometimes there can be a little competition between some of these college gym walls and the local climbing gyms, but it sounds like you guys got a perfect kind of harmonious relationship. So I've talked to some other gym owners that have kind of steeper terrain, and sometimes it's harder to kind of get newer climbers into the sport with that. Have you found like any methods that have been sort of helpful in making that transition into the sport easier?
We have two flat, like air quotes, flat wall sections. One of the sections of our main wall is all vert, and then there's one that's slightly helical. So it starts off
Hmm.
at vertical and kind of transitions into probably 15 degrees overhung before it comes this big steep arête. So we've always tried to have a lot of beginning terrain, beginner climbs in those areas, and then have climbs coming out of our steep sections that are the easiest in reality that you can get on our. We have a giant 60-degree overhung middle section. We put V2 on those, but I think in most gyms it would probably be a little harder. In our roof section, it's probably the same. The easiest you can get is V2. But we do
Yeah.
try to use as much of that terrain to have um, more introductory climbs and beginner climbs there. And a really large part of our attention, I think, has been to try and make the energy, the vibe of the gym, if you will, feel very almost like home. It's like the third place, a place where you feel at ease and it's less intense, a place that's less intimidating and doesn't feel quite as harsh or judgy.
Hmm.
And I definitely say that with love. I think a lot of gyms are able to accomplish that, but I've been in plenty that have a little bit of a colder corporate clinical feel.
Yeah.
And when I go in, it does kind of feel like no one wants to talk to you. And I feel like the arrangement and the idea of a lot of the staff and kind of just like the general community feel when you do come in, you sort of have to climb around other people. There aren't a lot of places to hide. And when you're in the middle climbing with a bunch of people, we have old couches. We've never bought new couches in a decade. It's all they've all been used in other capacities. So like it feels very at ease. And and in that, I do feel like when you walk into this gym, when you walk into Appalachian Bouldering Center as well, like there is sort of a homey feel to it. And I do think that sets you a little bit more at ease where if you want to talk to someone, anyone at the front desk or a lot of people in the community, most of our staff is going to be in here climbing in some capacity anyway. So there are a lot of people that you can talk to. So that helps with, if you're trying to navigate and find something really easy to climb on, you don't feel silly or ostracized or like in your own little corner trying to do that.
Yeah, the sport can be really intimidating, and I've been to gyms where you don't feel that welcome. And my wife's kind of a newer climber, not newer, but she's climbs infrequently, and she still kind of has that mindset of she doesn't like to be climbing in front of people because she feels like she's in the way or she's not climbing hard enough, and she feels like she's being judged. So it's
Yeah.
easy to kind of fall into that. So it's cool to hear that your community seems to be like accepting of newer climbers and supportive of them.
No audio on my end.
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
It's like an old
Um,
Verizon commercial.
because it is intimidating. I think if you've climbed for a long time, you forget that.
Yeah.
And it's like if you step into the arena somewhere else as a beginner, like a skate park, if you go to a jujitsu gym, or if you go to some of these other places where it's like a time requisite discipline that you are getting into no matter what. Like in the very beginning, it's intimidating as hell to like get into something and it's hard and it takes forever. And when you come in and you see someone who is really good, just kind of fly up the climb that you a minute ago looked at and were like, oh, that's scary. How do you even do that? Um, and someone that's been in a space and is kind of like indoctrinated to a space, they know the flow, they know what to do. If you don't know that, this climb is going to trend to the right and overlap
Mhm.
something else, or you don't know that someone else is kind of waiting in queue at the edge of a pad, but you didn't know that the edge of the pad is where someone waits in queue to get onto a climb. And you're just kind of standing there looking up and trying to figure out what to do. That person might feel like you can pick up on the body language of someone that feels inconvenienced by you. So any of those things add to an experience and add to that feeling of intimidation in a gym. And not to mention a lot of gyms that have like a bunch of shirtless college bros that are like monkeying around and being super loud. And then you walk into a gym, that's going to be also pretty intimidating and frustrating. So I feel like just being conscious of that as a gym and knowing that you are going to have people who base their first experience off of their first experience. Um, that first experience walking up to the front desk, no one's ever been there before. So that's all the knowledge that they have about your business. That first encounter at the front desk. Hey, how are you? Do you get the snobby coffee shop vibe from someone that's behind the front desk? Like, oh my gosh, I have to actually chuck someone in. Do you get that? When you come in, is it a bunch of, again, the shirtless college bros that you encounter that make you uncomfortable or intimidating? Or is it someone that smiles at you and waves back because they're also happy to be in that space? Is the space relatively clean? Doesn't have to be spotless, but relatively. Did someone give you an orientation of like the layout of the gym, or are you left to your own devices? All of those things, I feel like if you think about those, at the very least, your first impression, which is a lasting impression, is going to be positive.
That's great. Well, I want to keep going, but we're gonna cut it here since we are experiencing technical difficulties with the storm that's happening. So maybe we'll have to do another podcast interview with you in the future where there's less wind and the world is not trying to stop us from doing this. So, do you have any final words of wisdom or advice for newer business owners that are growing their climbing gym currently?
Yeah, I would really just think taking it slow and like not trying to force the gym into any certain boxes or shapes that you think it needs to be immediately. Focus on the gym as it being a place that you inherently would want to spend time yourself.
Mm.
And judging the value of it off of the community and how much they're enjoying it and wanting to be there. But on top of all of that, realizing that the climbs that you create are your product. The setting team that you foster, they are what you are serving to your community. Your community of climbers is your customer base. So if you were just adjacent to that, if you were a bread company, it doesn't matter how expensive your kitchen is, and it doesn't matter how expensive necessarily the ingredients are. If they're good ingredients, you love baking, and you realize that the bolder problems that you set are the bread that you're baking and serving to your community. They don't care about your kitchen. They care about your bread.
Mhm.
So think about it that way, pay your setters, and just really enjoy the space that you're in. And I think it's going to be a good thing.
That's a great analogy. I love that. So, where can people follow you or learn more about what you're doing?
We've got a good social media, Center 45 Climbing. We have a decent website that's up there. And also Appalachian Bouldering Center up in Bristol, Tennessee, on the state line of Tennessee and Virginia. Check the Instagram out there as well. Also, Central Appalachia Climbers Coalition. We do a lot of really good work outdoors with that. So any of those, just check in and come visit if you're up in the area.
Well, thanks again for doing this. It's awesome. Sharing your insight and stories. I think people will get a lot out of it. And let's do it again soon.
Yeah, if the audio is too crazy, just let me know. I can jump back on anytime whenever it's nice and sunny out. Maybe it'll work out a little better. But yeah, just let me know.
Thanks, Aaron.